Our question today is about questions. So here's the question. We are full of questions. It appears the questions are how we learn and discover our world. But is there ever a point at which we have no questions?
Who is the questioner? What is the question pointing to? The question then always presupposes some inherent conflict, some need for progress, some need for an analytical understanding in some sort of a way. Now, the Indus Valley, Vedic philosophy, what we've came to call Hinduism, gave us the way of Jnana Yoga. There's Bhakti Yoga, there's Karma Yoga, there's many other yogas, but if we can just use the mental, emotional, and the active will centers for a minute as guides, there are these three yogas. Karma Yoga, which is of the active or will center. Bhakti Yoga, the way of devotion, the way of the heart. And Jnana Yoga, in which we use questions to defeat the questioning mind. The idea here was that you would ask your questions necessarily to the guy who can answer these questions, or at least ignore them if necessary, and out of your this dynamic, should we say, one day you transcend the questions. So we've caught on to that idea quite heavily these days in the self-inquiry tradition of Ramana Maharshi, and then Nisargadatta and Papaji, and so on and so on. And then we have the, should we say, to be nice, we have the modern day teachers, the so-called disciples of Papaji and so forth, who have come over here and come over to the West anyway, and conducted satsangs and whatnot, where you go and you ask a question. And so the idea is still in place that through exhausting somehow the questioning mind, you will transcend questions. And after all, since it's the ego self that's posing the questions, must be because there's a questioner, there's a question, and then there's the questioned. So it's the cat sat on the mat. You know, we're in a kind of low-level area of consciousness here, which isn't really relationship at all, rather it is division. And so transcending the questions means transcending the ego self. This is synonymous, you see. But what we rather missed, because, I mean, you have to ask yourself, since there's a worldwide movement of Advaita and the question defeating the question practice and all that kind of thing, how come the place we don't have several thousand highly enlightened people like Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta or Ramesh Balsekar or any of these guys who did this kind of thing their whole life? If you look at the Nisargadatta transcripts of hundreds of meetings with people, in my experience, it's only only twice out of scores and scores and scores. I got about 8 books, there's even more these days. Multiple meetings with spiritual seekers. There's only twice, 2 times, he ever commends the questioner and sends them off with his total blessing and pronounces them a rare spirit embodied. Only twice. So, and he lived in a slum over by his kiosk in Mumbai. Very poor man, world renowned now, but you see, and quite well known in his lifetime, but relatively unknown even in Bombay as it was then. Mainly it was foreign people who came to see him. But you see, the ones who really caught on weren't merely questioning, and I think this is what the modern day version of Advaita and questions to defeat the mind and so on rather misses, because there has to be this questioning, this Gnani approach, which is the way of the mind approach, absolutely steeped in the heart, or absolutely steeped in the devotional approach. So when you read people like Jean Dunn and Ramesh Balsekar and these other people who were disciples of Nisargadatta, what comes over first and foremost is not a kind of brittle mental approach, but this absolute devotion to the master. They were steeped in Bhakti yoga. They were Bhakti yogis masquerading, really, as Gnani yogis. In other words, the mental approach not going to work unless it's in the nutritional soil, you say, the water almost, the water and the earth of bhakti, devotion, or the heart. So it's a lovely way. It's a lovely way. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of effort. You have to keep asking. In the West, we have a big problem with that. I remember being 5, I'd only been at school 5 minutes, and I asked a question, and you could immediately feel, many people have this kind of experience, the disapproval of not only the peer group, but even the teacher for being so stupid. I thought you were at school to learn something. It appeared you had to already know. So at least in the West, a lot of us have got this idea that we really don't want to show that we don't know. So it can be very difficult to ask any question, let alone embark on a spiritual career of continually coming up with questions, even though they are present in the mind, which is uncertain and confused and all the rest of it. So we have to overcome that in some way if we're going to go that way. But what I would say about this is only do it in the nourishing soil of the heart, and if bhakti is present, and if there is a real engagement with the one who's receiving the question, who incidentally is yourself.